All right, let's get started. Thank you to everyone for your interest in today's session on the state of virtual sales coaching, 5 tips to help you adapt this quarter. We encourage your participation today as everyone benefits from a curious, engaged audience. Don't be shy about asking questions or adding comments in the questions tab of your GoToWebinar interface. You can ask them anytime, no need to wait until the end. This presentation is being recorded. An on-demand version will be sent to you in the next day or so. Our speakers today are familiar webinar faces, Jake Miller and Jonathan Carlson, both part of Allego's Rockstar Marketing team. Jake is Allego's Senior Product Marketing Manager, and a little known fact about him, he has a college degree in drumming and enjoys making fun video compilations of his toddler daughter's most impressive wipeouts around the house. John is Senior Director of Marketing at Allego and enjoys hating on dad jokes, even though he's a frequent contributor to the category. Jake and John bring a ton of experience and know-how to this topic, so we're excited to have them presenting to us today. With that said, let's get started. Take it away, John.
Thank you, Craig. And you've taught me never to leave my fun facts to you ever again. I have lots of other fun facts, just so you guys know. But it's great. It's great to be here as always. Jake, always a pleasure to be presenting alongside you. This is a really exciting topic for us, state of virtual coaching. Anybody who's been following Allego for a long time knows that coaching is a topic that is near and dear to our hearts. But as with everything that we've been talking about for the past year, it's changed. It's changed pretty dramatically recently, and you need to start thinking a little bit differently about how to coach and receive coaching differently moving forward and in order to make your team as effective as it possibly can be. So with that, let's jump in. So in this presentation, we're going to share 5 virtual coaching tips to help you adapt this quarter. But before we get there, let's take a quick step back and analyze what is the state of virtual sales coaching today. And to help answer that question, our team at Allego here actually a few months back decided to do a research project on virtual coaching. So we reached out to about 250 sales trainers and their teams in January, and we asked them a bunch of questions about coaching. What's easier than it used to be? What's harder? How is going virtual helped or hurt you in the coaching process? And we produced some really interesting results. We're going to go over some of them today. We've also got a report that we can share with you if you want to dive deeper into it. But it was pretty eye-opening in terms of the challenges that managers and their teams are having, specifically around coaching in this virtual, remote, distributed, however you want to talk about it, in this new world that we're in and that we're probably going to stay in for a while. So if you're curious about the methodology, that's up here for you too. But let's take a look at some of the results. Coaching virtually is harder, according to sales leaders. Maybe not a huge surprise, but 67% say it's harder to observe remote reps during their calls to give them constructive feedback. That shouldn't be surprising. They're not in the office. They're not doing ride-alongs, right? They can't see always, how their team is performing on calls and in practice sessions. 60% say it's harder to keep their remote team current on new products, features, and pricing. And we know this is critical right now and always, right? As new products and features are released, the team needs to be trained up, they need to be coached, they need to be fluent and articulate on how to deliver that new messaging. And no surprise, when teams aren't together to receive that training, it's harder to make sure that every rep knows what they need to be doing in order to be successful. Jake, any commentary on these stats? I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, it's interesting, the 67% finding it harder to observe remote reps during calls. This is, one of the big influx in requests that we've gotten from as a technology vendor is around conversation intelligence. That the capability to automatically record sales calls and have put machine learning, artificial intelligence to analyzing it and pulling out insights, topics, etc. So yeah, it aligns with what we're seeing as a technology vendor. So yeah, it's just interesting.
Yeah, 100%. A few more insights that we found pretty compelling. again, probably not shocking, but worth reinforcing that new hires tend to struggle the most in this environment. On average, it's taking twice as long for new hires to be productive during the pandemic and being virtual compared to when they could train in person, right? They don't, new hires in particular need that hands-on training and attention to get not just up to speed on product knowledge and feature functionality and all that, but get ingrained into the culture of the team, understand how the team functions, what's expected of them, how to perform better, being alongside their colleagues to understand what good looks like. That's so important for a new hire, right? And a lot of teams are lacking that right now. So again, not surprising, but important. And almost half, 49% of sales leaders say it is harder to get new hires up to speed and onboarded, right? So it's taking longer and it's harder. These are critical areas. The more time you spend onboarding, the less efficient your team is, right? Because people aren't functioning at full speed. So this is important to hone in on. Jake, anything to add here?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest things, I mean, I can remember from in my days when I was selling different kind of products, different industry, but I was selling in high ticket retail space. And so I'd be in a showroom by myself a lot, like especially in the earlier part of my career. And that's the same kind of thing that we're seeing now with the remote environment. You have new reps joining the company and they're kind of on an island because we're not all together in the office. And so there's something about when you're with another group of salespeople, there's an energy, there's things that you feed off of. You hear them taking calls, you get to, shadow, you get to have that water cooler talk. That stuff is not happening as much now. And so that's got to be contributing to this increase in ramp time. Not having that access to other salespeople.
Yeah, exactly. Good stuff. Okay, so we've talked about some of the challenges, but there was also a light at the end of the tunnel reflected in the survey, or at least optimism reflected, in that sales professionals believe that the right tools can help them overcome these challenges. 97%, almost 100, say that the difficulty of training in different time zones, which is a big part of this, just people being distributed geographically, can be overcome with asynchronous training tools, right? So asynchronous meaning non-live, right? Not necessarily having to be on the same Zoom call at the same time. Email is an example of asynchronous, and we'll talk about this later, but what we really focus on at Allego is asynchronous video, right? So you get the benefit of not having to be in the same space and at the same time as somebody, but you get the benefit of being able to see their faces and building those one-to-one connections. So pretty across the board, everybody feels that can be helpful to overcome these challenges. And 91% believe that having video-based training has helped them become more successful at working remotely. Just speaking to the importance of the medium through which we're all communicating. Video, as we all know, is so powerful. And in this presentation, we're going to talk about different ways that you can use video, perhaps more creatively and differently than you have in the past, to make your coaching efforts even more effective than they were in the past. So Jake, any closing thoughts here on this, on the research side of things?
Yeah, just to that last point about video, how it's so powerful and so important for communicating sales knowledge, how to handle an objection, how to speak to a certain competitive trap that a competitor might have set for you, how to dance around a potential weakness that we've got in the product, right? How do we handle that? It's being able to capture the body language, the tone, all the stuff that you can't capture through text. That's why video is so important. Plus, it's a lot easier to capture the information. Like if you're trying to convey how, here's how I do this, I'm trying to type that up, that's not going to be effective, right? If you're talking about sales
Exactly.
knowledge. So it's this lines up with what we've seen as a vendor as well.
Yeah. All right, so before we jump in to the meat of the presentation, just a quick slide on Allego's take on virtual coaching today. Right, and we do believe that, as is reflected in the survey, virtual selling challenges are solvable if you've got the right tools and the right approaches and the right people to enforce all of that on your team. And it's also important to note that sales tech and sales coaching and training and selling in general was moving virtual way before the pandemic. The pandemic just accelerated the process of virtual selling and virtual coaching becoming really prevalent throughout all businesses, right? But this is where every industry has been heading. So it's important to note, like, just because some folks might be going back to the office or going into a hybrid model, the need to be really trained up on good virtual coaching and virtual selling, like that's here to stay. 90% of B2B sales are virtual right now, as you see in the stat here, and so that's massive. I think we all understand the importance, but it's worth, again, hammering that home. Listen, we know that most sales teams are distributed across geographies, and digital tools are needed to collaborate effectively and efficiently in this scenario where teams are not necessarily together in the same space. And Jake, do you want to talk a little bit about the two types of coaching that folks need to consider?
Yep. Yeah. So if you're thinking about designing a coaching program, be thinking in terms of two different types of coaching that go on. You can kind of boil any coaching interaction into two types, really more skills based and more deal based. Skills based coaching is going to be more on presentation skills, about how to good sort of sales hygiene, sales best practices, things like making sure that a person is learning the skills to continue asking for closing for next steps, right? Anytime you you're getting off of a call with a customer, right? Things like that, more skills based, more kind of focused on repeatable skills that employee is going to be able, that rep is going to continue applying. The other side of it, deal-based coaching, and that's like getting right into the mechanics of a deal and saying, hey, do this next. We know that this is going on. Here's what you can think about for how to approach this situation in this deal itself. And then of course they sort of feed one another, right? That you're learning things about this deal that then become part of skills that you've got that you can use for other deals. But that's sort of how we think about it when we're working with organizations to structure their coaching program. Those kind of two big buckets of coaching. We can talk more about that throughout this presentation.
Awesome. All right. So let's jump right into 5 virtual coaching tips to help you adapt this quarter. So the first one that we're going to talk about goes back to a point that we made just now in the research. You've got to embrace asynchronous video. We have, asynchronous is a confusing term. It's like asynchronous what? We should talk about that a little bit. And also the why asynchronous is important. So as we said, when we think about asynchronous, it's about non-live communication and collaboration around the same project or the same topic, right? So at Allego, we really think about this as recorded video that allows you to communicate and collaborate with your team when you're not in the same space and you're not in the same time, right? Necessarily, you can, or when you don't have the same time. So often, as we've all experienced, I know I experience this every single day, my calendar is completely booked with Zoom meetings. That's exhausting, right? And by the end of the day, I'm completely wiped. And that's hard to maintain over a long period of time. And B, it's just really hard to schedule things, right? It's hard to schedule, like Jake and I, we try to talk as much as we can, but it's hard. We both have really busy calendars. It's hard to get on the same page at the same time live. So an efficient workaround for that is, we of course use Allego, but using asynchronous video to communicate. You can record a video of yourself, talking about whatever topic is at hand. You can share it with whoever you need to, whether that's one person or multiple people, and then they can watch that on their own time. You can see a screenshot here. They can then, in Allego, they can write notes back or record voice notes back, with point-in-time feedback. So it becomes a really healthy, transparent, collaborative process that is not restricted by when everybody can meet on the same schedule. So it's much more flexible. So this starts to get into the why of asynchronous, right? And I think that's really important. So when it comes to coaching, there's never enough time for live coaching, right? It's so hard to get time, especially if you manage large sales teams. It's really hard to get that time with all of your reps without completely overwhelming everybody's calendar. Especially as a manager, as I say, your calendar fills up. And it's hard to give every rep the amount of attention that they deserve. So asynchronous can help with this. If your rep is able to record practice calls or record live calls, and then you as a manager can review those calls in your own time and be more present in the moment, about understanding what's going well, what's going poorly, how can they improve, that kind of thing. Because otherwise it's really hard to review the game film, as we call it, right? Customer conversations. You don't really have ride-alongs available to you anymore. You're not sitting next to your reps in the sales pen, listening to how calls are going, being able to give feedback in the moment. if all those calls, either practice or real, customer calls, if all those calls are being recorded and you have access to them, that makes it easier. It makes it easier for coaches to review game film, and it makes it easier for reps to feel like they have the support and attention from their managers that they need, the coaching from their managers that they need. So all of these traditionally in-person activities have to go virtual, right? And there are benefits that come with it. For instance, reps are able to practice more if they're practicing over video rather than practicing in a live scenario, right? We found that 6 times the amount of practice is available to reps when they're doing it in this way, right? It gives them more time and space and freedom to refine their pitch. Role playing can be done asynchronously. Of course, it's great to have live role play scenarios, but you can simulate that asynchronously. With Allego, coaches can distribute hot seat exercises that throw out specific sales scenarios to their reps that they have to respond to and record. That's really useful. Coaches can give their reps assignments that need to be completed that help to hone their skills against certain scenarios. So role playing can be done asynchronously, which is really cool. Call coaching intelligence. This really refers to recording of live sales calls, right? So having a repository of recorded calls that coaches can go in and view whenever they want to, so they can see how a rep is performing in the field over time and what needs to be improved. And then, of course, provide the appropriate reinforcement based on those scenarios. So, Jake, I know I'm covering a lot of territory here, but anything you want to comment on here before we move to the next slide?
Yeah, it's all the kind of the mapping of those two deal focused coaching and skills focused coaching, right? And taking all of that into the virtual environment. It's, if everybody's virtual now, you can't be face to face to do role plays. If you've got a rep who is walking into an important negotiation next week, you can't sit them down and pop by their desk and just say, hey, let's role play how you're gonna approach this, how you're gonna message this. If you're a rep, you can't go and just pop by your manager's office or a subject matter expert who you trust and give them show them the pitch that you're gonna do, right, and get feedback on that. You can't do these things live. Same thing with shadowing calls for deal coaching, for more, deal focused coaching. You're not able to go on ride-alongs the way you were. So it's all about taking these and bringing them virtual. And there are a lot of benefits that you get from this that we'll talk about as far as, data and having more visibility into the whole coaching process that goes on at your company when you're using a virtual tool to do actual coaching delivery.
Yeah. Exactly. So, we don't have to go through each and every one of these, but we wanted to throw out some examples of how asynchronous coaching can work, right? So as a coach or as a manager, you can use recorded video to prep your team and mentor your team, either individually or at scale. Again, you can share videos either with individuals or with your whole team. So just being a constant visible presence for your team is important here. And obviously, having live video to do that is important. And I think we need to clarify that we're not saying you shouldn't use live video. Live video is incredibly impactful, and Zoom calls are really impactful, but it can't be the only way to communicate, right? This asynchronous is a supplement to live, and a really important one that adds depth and flexibility to your coaching and your selling efforts. So as we've already said, it helps to drive skills practice, coaching, message consistency. I think probably maybe something that people don't think about a lot is that having access to recorded calls over time doesn't just allow your coach to see, the current status of your reps in terms of how they're performing, but you can go back in time and see how they've progressed. Are they delivering messaging consistently? Are they improving on that messaging? Are they evolving in the right ways? So that's an added benefit with this type of coaching and call recording that really wasn't as available to people, or at least as readily available to people before. So I think that's definitely worth noting. And then one more example here is both reps and managers are able to share in this manner just-in-time competitive intelligence, right? So if a rep is about to head into a deal where we know a competitor is present, either the coach or reps who have worked against this competitor before can share really relevant insights into how to combat any messaging that's coming from that competitor, right? Whether that's through a recorded video, just sharing tips about how to handle the situation, or whether it's sharing a kill sheet or a battle card, or other documentation. All of this is so much easier to facilitate in an asynchronous way than it is over live when you're virtual, right? So yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. There's a whole, this is really just the tip of the iceberg, but these are some of the key ways that asynchronous coaching can really benefit you and your team. Jake, anything?
We have a quick question, sorry, from Brendan about any tips on helping sellers be more comfortable behind the camera. There's some great sellers that are great at in-person presentations, but for some reason, when they hit the record button, they get a little shy.
Yeah, that's a good question, and we saw it. We've seen it a decent amount, especially at the beginning of COVID. I feel like there were some teams that just were really uncomfortable recording themselves, and which is funny because you think of sellers, they're outgoing or gregarious, they wouldn't mind it, but it's a different beast. It's different from being in a one-on-one in-person scenario. So I really think just ripping the Band-Aid off and making that first recording is really the best thing that any rep can do, because the more often they do it, the more comfortable they'll get. And we've seen this, with our own team over time. It just becomes muscle memory, right? And that's where you need to get to. It's going to get uncomfortable. You're going to, you're not comfortable in your own skin. You don't like looking at yourself. I get it. None of us do, but like it gets easier. So I think persistence is really key here. But Jake, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the key, is keeping on doing it. And before the pandemic, there wasn't as much of a need. Now there is. It's the whole world has gone virtual, and so virtual selling it involves getting on camera, right? And so that's where some of these things that we've seen, a lot of organizations have success with using video practice, right? Having reps, if we want to get everybody on the same sheet of music, have everybody submit, hey, how do you message, how do you articulate our message, right? Send back a 3-4 minute example of that. And then we can do coaching on that, use artificial intelligence to do coaching. When the rep is recording their example, they're practicing on video. And of course, when a rep is going to submit, they do practice takes. Like, they want to make sure that the good version is the one they submit. And so that's driving more practice, just being on video. It's just getting comfortable on, being in front of the camera. And we're at a place now where you, as a salesperson, you have to do it. So it's just a matter of keeping on doing it.
Yeah. I think it's as simple as that. All right, we spent a lot of time on that one, so let's move along to the next. So Jake, you want to talk about how to reduce the coaching load with self-evaluation and artificial intelligence?
Yeah, so this is one of the big things we've always seen is with coaches. It's, we've surveyed managers in the past, and it's always been, I don't have time to do coaching. And so, finding ways to kind of reduce that coaching burden is key. So the stuff you were just talking about, John, with asynchronous, you can really start to kind of capture examples of other salespeople doing the thing that you're trying to communicate to this rep here. Hey, do this, that you should be doing more of this, and you're trying to coach them on that. If you've got an example footage of another person doing it that's bottled up and ready to go, you can just tell that rep, hey, watch this other person doing it. This is a great example. That just saved you time as a manager. You didn't have to try to explain it. You didn't have to sit down for a 30-minute coaching session. You can just kind of point people to other examples of other reps. So that's one way of kind of reducing that burden. And then also, the thing that I just talked about with salespeople creating asynchronous video to go back and forth, doing this video role play paradigm. Salespeople aren't going to send something back unless it's good. And usually when, if you sit down to practice a presentation in the mirror, or stand to practice it in the mirror, right? You find that it's a little bit easier. You can kind of go easy on yourself because you can kind of stop and then start again. There's something different when you hit that record button and it's going and you're like live, and you got to nail it. You got to be able to do it in one take. As soon as you start practicing on video, you realize how much you don't have that talk track down like you thought you did. And so, reps end up, they self-evaluate using video. They can watch their submission, they can watch the take that they did. And we find, they're practicing 4 to 5 takes. And so that's allowing reps to be able to kind of see, okay, here's where I went wrong. I was was using a lot of ums and ahs, and I was shifting around too much when I was delivering this. And then of course using AI to start to kind of provide an early warning system for the rep too, just flagging things like, hey, you're talking too fast here. Hey, here's a spot where you went off message, right? This thing that you're supposed to be doing the role play on is for this particular product, and you just said something that is out of bounds, or if you're in a regulated industry, you just said something that's off label or whatever it might be. So it's a really powerful way to get salespeople to self-evaluate and to kind of really reduce that coaching burden for managers. And any additional thoughts on that, John?
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. Just I think sometimes managers and coaches feel like all the pressure is on them to catch every single thing that may be going right or wrong with their reps. But if you can build a culture where reps are starting to self-evaluate and help to evaluate their peers and share examples of how they've been successful, that burden is reduced, and it becomes a stronger sales environment because of that, because the team is becoming more connected and more reliant on one another, and less reliant on their boss, right? So I think that's only a good thing when the sales engine can start to become more self-sufficient. That's as long as there's sufficient oversight, that's a positive thing.
Exactly.
All right, move the slides forward. All right, so let's talk about the next tip, which is to reduce the coaching load again with peer-to-peer and subject matter expert content. Right, so this just goes along with exactly what we were just saying. If you get into it, if you start to build a culture where reps are soliciting and sharing feedback from and with one another, that's when things can really start to click. Ideas start to flow. Sales processes start to become more uniform and connected. There's a greater chance that people are going to be speaking from the same playbook, right? The same script. That's important. It allows when reps talk to each other either live or asynchronously and start to share what's working, what's not working. Hey, this deck is really good, but can we switch out this slide because I just got this pain point that I think we need to better address. When you get reps working together in that way, again, the whole engine gets stronger. You can start driving faster with more confidence. So creating that culture, I think, should be key for any sales team, right? Rather than having people work in their silos, which is so much easier to happen. It's so much more likely to happen when you're remote. You want to avoid that. You want to get reps contributing to each other and being comfortable getting feedback from each other. Similarly, you should be looking across your entire organization as a manager and as a coach and even as a rep and saying, who here has knowledge that I can take advantage of? Is there somebody in product who can help me understand what product managers, are dealing with, the pains that they're dealing with, or that has insight into our product that I don't know about, something like that? Can I get them to record that information and share it not just with me, but share it with the whole team? I feel like there's so many statistics about how much knowledge is lost or not used to its full advantage when you're just having a one-to-one conversation with somebody, by the water cooler in the kitchen or just in the office, right? If you can capture those moments where knowledge is being shared from anybody in your company who's an authority on a certain subject, and distribute that at scale across your team, all of a sudden your whole company becomes more powerful and productive. So identifying who the subject matter experts on your team are and starting to get them to contribute to training and coaching content is something that we should all be striving towards. And that's probably an area that a lot of companies and teams aren't very good at because it's not intuitive, right, to look outside of your immediate sales family. But it's so important to do that. And I know we've pointed out this last point a couple of times, but showcasing what good looks like, the idea of cloning your top performers. When you're using recorded video for coaching and training and collaboration, it's a lot easier to do this, right? Again, you can do ride-alongs and reps can listen to their top sellers and try to mimic what they're doing, but when they actually see the example of a rep in the field doing their thing and closing deals and navigating tricky situations really easily, or at least seemingly effortlessly, obviously there's a lot of effort that goes into it, all of a sudden everybody has access to the same information, right? And can do their best to try to replicate that and build on it. That's important too. If you start with a baseline level of what good looks like, and people start to build on top of that, then suddenly what good looks like gets even the bar becomes even higher, and the team gets more productive, and you can build on a top rep's success, right? When they might have become stagnant otherwise. So there's so much good synergy that comes with this type of collaboration and communication. And again, from a coaching perspective, this makes the coach's life so much easier, right? That's what we're going for. We want to reduce the burden on the coach, make coaching more effective, and distribute the burden of coaching and training across the organization so that there's more coverage. That's really what we're going for here. Jake, did I leave anything out? Anything you wanted to say on this slide?
Yeah, no, and just to kind of like put a bow on it, it's, sales enablement is all about replicating top performers. Like sales enablement, the key to great sales enablement is to go in and analyze what are your top people doing? What are their behaviors? How are they messaging things? What content are they sharing? What are they doing? How do they run their sales process? And then putting process around that, codifying that, right? And so and then what do reps want on the other side? Reps want to hear from other reps. They want to learn what the top people are doing. They want to make that same, they want that success, right? So being able to kind of do this to capture and bottle up these examples of great delivery, of great conversations, of great questioning is, it's incredibly valuable across the board on the team. And that is how you start to drive that self-sustaining culture of upskilling.
Yeah. All right, awesome. So let's advance the deck here. Craig, you want to jump in? We've got just a few things to draw your attention to before we move on.
Yeah, thank you, John. I just wanted to let everyone know about some great free content from Allego that may interest you, packed with tangible, actionable tips and insights. In case you haven't seen this, we have our new research on virtual coaching, the inspiration for today's webinar, virtual sales coaching report, how sales training has changed. Lots of great stats and insights there, so check it out at allego.com/coaching 2021. And on the next slide, we have our upcoming webinar on Thursday, May 20th. Our fearless marketing leader, Allego CMO Wayne St. Amand, sits down with everybody's favorite marketing guru and good guy, Matt Hines, to discuss closing the great divide, building a bridge between sales and marketing. This is really going to be must watch for anyone responsible for revenue enablement, which is probably most everyone on this webinar today. You can register at allego.com/great-divide. Also, a reminder that we'll be sharing some screenshots and information about some major new Allego functionality at the end of this webinar. So don't touch that mouse or trackpad. With that tease, I'll kick it to you, Jake.
All right, thanks, Craig. So this next part here, talking about leveraging artificial intelligence and conversation intelligence technology to scale your coaching efforts. So what is conversation intelligence? It's a technology that's really taking off, especially with the pandemic and everybody going remote, to be able to, as you can see here, surface and act on coachable moments throughout the whole team, right? You've got the ability with this to put an artificial intelligence onto all of these recorded sales calls to pull out topic insights. What was the rate of speech? Was the rep talking too fast? Were they talking the whole time and not asking enough questions? You can see the difference between talking and on either side of the call, the rep or the buyer. And then, being able to kind of pull out insights from that, auto note take back to CRM, so the rep doesn't have to be taking notes. You can do, doing certifications, right? Making sure that if you want to run a certification on how well is everybody on the team doing as far as question asking, discovery questions, ensuring that they are adhering to the methodology, right, on calls. You can now pull those in and actually score and certify reps on their actual performance right there. And then, seeing how they progress over time is critical when it comes to, again, building skills across the team, understanding who is participating, who is really making the most of their enablement, and then how can we sort of replicate the people who are doing best and who've made the biggest, delta from where they were to where they are today. How can we help other reps who are coming into the organization to do something similar? So you've got the ability to kind of, not only you're tracking everything that's going on, you're able to manage your coaching, but you're able to even deliver the coaching. So you've got the ability here. You've got you can see in the image, it's kind of smaller, but it's this little comment card on the screen. You can drop in a comment right at a point in time when a rep said something on a call, and you can actually take a video of yourself speaking to that, giving them feedback, especially if it's critical, kind of if you're saying something like, hey, you should probably do something a little bit different here. The way you phrased this wasn't quite on point. It's probably not going to resonate with the prospect when you say it like that, right? Imagine trying to type that out. It's going to come off, you might come off sounding terse, or or like you're upset with them or something, right? But when you can put feedback in a video like that within the video, it's critical. And then this allows you to look across your whole team. What are the what are the things that the most successful people talk about at the beginning of their call? Most. When at what point in the sales process, on which call, are they really getting into pricing, or are they able to kind of are they taking more time to kind of build out the solution and understand the challenge more, right? What are the people who are most successful? How are they delivering the value proposition? How long are they taking to deliver that, right? You can start to pull out these insights and really target your coaching, so you don't have to try to coach. If you're trying to write, if you have 8 sales reps and you want to do coaching on all of their sales calls in a week, if you're not using something like this, you're sitting on 8 hours of calls, and then you're trying to take notes on the call. Versus here, you can just boom, you can pop a note right at the point when the rep said whatever the thing was that you want to give them coaching on. Or conversely, if you want to bottle up some of this, a great example, you can use artificial intelligence to flag for you, hey, go check out this call from yesterday from this rep. They did a great job here. You should maybe think about doing this as a best practice, clipping that out, putting that into a learning library or a learning recommendation engine for other reps, right? Again, it's getting this process going of scaling your coaching, using artificial intelligence. Any thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, that's the name of the game. Scaling your ability to reach your team, right? The stat here, 20% on average of sales calls are reviewed. But with a tool like conversation intelligence, artificial intelligence, something that's always, as much as possible, recording and analyzing calls, every single call can be analyzed and used and leveraged by a coach, right, in a much more targeted, personalized way. So it goes back to the point of reducing the administrative burden of coaching and just making it more natural. And nothing that we're talking about here when it comes to AI analysis of calls or anything like that. None of that is intended to replace the work of a coach. I think that's really important to say, because some teams probably look at AI or something like this as a crutch, right? Oh, I'll just let the AI spit out a number, and that's the grade of the call, and we'll move on. That's not really how it should work, right? AI and this type of conversational intelligence should be a tool that a coach uses to give more personalized, more targeted feedback, right? But they still, nothing can replace the knowledge of a good coach, right? And the personal relationship that a coach has with their teams. So just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about these types of tools. They're immensely powerful, and they are the future of coaching. Like, this type of functionality is just going to build and build and build and become more powerful, but you're never going to be able to take the coach completely out of this. Never to take the humanity out of it, because that's so much of what coaching is and so much of what selling is, right? Yeah. So that's the only thing I'd add to this, Jake.
Yeah, that's a great point.
All right. So we've got the this build out here, just to look at how conversation intelligence powers every category of sales enablement. So Jake, I'm building the whole thing out, but you can speak to some of these points if you like.
Yeah, sure. So this is how we think about a full enablement sort of function, and sort of from a supporting technology standpoint. Each of these 5 segments on this wheel is sort of an enablement process, or a process in the company that is driven in large part by enablement, right? So at the bottom left, you've got coaching collaboration. onboarding and training, getting every new sales rep onboarded quickly, and running national sales meetings and keeping everybody upskilled. Launches and rollouts. Anytime you're launching something new, you're training folks, you're getting content prepared, you're helping them understand how to articulate the messaging, running certifications, right? Content management, managing all of the marketing material for the sellers, making sure that the right stuff is tagged to the right points in the sales process, that the salespeople know how to use the content appropriately, right? Providing content recommendations, making it easy for them to find the stuff that they need. And then finally, virtual selling. At the point of sale, over video conference, giving them content collections to put into digital sales rooms, going back and forth using video messaging with buyers, right? So this is sort of the whole spectrum of stuff that processes, 5 key kind of processes. And how we think about, conversation intelligence functionality and technology is really kind of powering all of these different processes. It's really like a layer that sort of drives analytics, drives insights, recommendations for every single part of your process. So, in coaching and collaboration, you're able to coach to calls. You're able to allow for recommendations for a role play exercise based on something someone said on a call. Up in onboarding and training, you can grab moments from calls and quickly enrich them with quiz questions, prompts, knowledge checks, and make that into a learning module. Clip out a 3-minute portion of a call where a rep did stellar delivery of the message, and that's maybe evergreen. You can pull that into the onboarding program. Imagine you're a new rep, and one of the first modules you interact with in your onboarding program is an actual footage from the field, from the game. That's all you want to see when you're a new rep onboarding, right? And recommending remedial learning. When reps get out in the field, you can use this technology to listen to what they're saying on the calls. And if they're saying something that's they should be coached on, you can have the AI recommend, here's some remedial learning. Here's a piece of content that you should watch. Here is here's an exercise that you should go through, answering questions, right, to kind of drill this knowledge into your mind, whatever it might be. And all that same stuff goes for when you're launching new products. You've got to train folks, and you can start when they get out in the field. You can see how they're selling things. You can pull back examples of great, in that post-launch period when you've put out that messaging, but the salespeople are now making it their own, right? So you can take examples of that and centralize. Hey, this is a great idea of how to deliver this that the rep came up with, and let's get it put through approvals, and let's get it out centralized. And then content management, right? Being able to mine meetings for messaging accuracy, right? It's hearing how are reps delivering messaging in the content pieces, and then understanding what topics are really important. What, if there's something an objection that the conversation intelligence is flagging that comes up on almost every call, do we have a white paper to address that objection? If not, we should. Let's build one, and let's get that in reps' hands so they put that out in front, right? Let's get out in front of that. Things like that to really kind of drive your content management. And hey, if say a prospect said something on a call, expressed interest in something or expressed an objection, you can have the conversation intelligence recommend the follow-up. Here's the right case study to follow up with based on that conversation you just had on the call. Here's the right white paper to follow up with based on this objection that they expressed, right? That's where it gets to be really powerful. And same thing when it goes to the virtual selling. Here are assets you can put into your digital sales room based on the call. You can clip out you can take the call itself, put it into that digital sales room for a collaboration space between the seller and buyer. So there's just a lot of there's a lot of synergies across the entire enablement function that this kind of technology really powers.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. A lot of ground covered there. So if anybody has questions on that, feel free to ask or follow up with me and Jake after this, and we're happy to go over this for you. Jake's being cognizant of time. We should probably go through this last point relatively quickly, but let's talk about measurement, right? This is how you sort of tie everything together.
Yeah. Yep. So this is, understanding the, what are the things that your sales reps are doing well at, and what are the things that they're struggling with, and who across the team is doing so, right? Again, being able to leverage these kinds of technologies to really see what's happening across the whole team without having to watch every single call is incredibly important, right? And being able to quickly scan across your team and see, okay, this collection of folks in this region are all doing this one thing, or these folks on this team are seeming to be sharing practices amongst one another because they're all doing this other thing that's working really well. And being able to have that sort of the digital trail of what's going on, not only on calls, but even on coaching interactions, right? Being able to see what is the feedback that managers are leaving to reps in their role play video exercises. How are they coaching the reps? Being able to help coach the coaches. You've got everything happening digitally, virtually, and so now you've got all this data to be able, and this visibility over, I mean, you have visibility into what is actually being said in coaching conversations, right? And so now you can start to really use your managers as more of a force multiplier to upskill them in their coaching, and you can, unleashing reps to be able to learn and coach one another as well.
Yeah, exactly. All right, and I think this is the last slide of this section. So you want to talk a little bit about this the Kirkpatrick evaluation model and the different levels of learning that we're looking at, that we're thinking about here?
Yeah, so this is when you're thinking about rolling out a coaching program, training program, this is kind of how this is an old model for and tried and true for evaluating the effectiveness, right? Level 1 on the Kirkpatrick pyramid, reaction, right? Did they react positively or negatively? Did what survey results, and asking them afterwards, respond with a poll on how the training was. Response to training, it's sort of the first level of just kind of baseline understanding. The next level, did they actually learn, right? Once you know that your training program, your coaching program gets, that it's favorable to the reps, is it actually driving value? Are they actually learning, right? How did they, did they demonstrate that they remembered the things that you're trying to help them remember, right? When you get up to this third level there, then it's about applying that, being able to apply your learning in the field, apply the things that were coached to. Can you measure a difference in behavior, right? And this is where seeing some of these charting trends over time on topics and conversations on sales calls, and seeing how reps are doing in role play exercises, and feedback that they're being given, and scores that they're being given, whether by AI or by a manager. Being able to see that over time to understand the impact of your coaching program on behavior. And then finally at the top, to business results, right? How can we correlate to higher win rates, to faster sales cycles, right? Did your coaching program, after it was implemented, did you see a lift in win rate across the reps who went through that coaching program versus others who didn't? And so these are kind of the ways that you want to think about when you're measuring the effectiveness of your program. It's kind of stepwise.
Yeah, this is useful, right? Because as you just said went over in the previous slide, there are so many things that you can measure, right? And that you should be measuring and paying attention to, and trying to get a gauge for how your reps are performing based on the coaching and training that you're putting into the team. But this is really at its core, foundationally, fundamentally, what you should be looking at. Have they learned, and is there impact from their efforts, right? This is what you need to know at the end of the day. If you can't track this, if you can't measure this, all the other stuff is pretty meaningless, right? And also important to note, so many reps don't get past level 1, right? You can get a pretty good sense if somebody reacts positively or negatively, but we know based on all the research out there that the majority of coaching and training is not retained after it's initially given, right? So they don't even get to step 2. So how can they possibly get to step 3 or 4? Everything we've talked about today, and yes, it's all applicable to a virtual world, but it's applicable to coaching in general. All the tactics and tips and strategies we've talked about today helps break through that barrier. It helps reps retain knowledge and then build on that knowledge to perform better over time. So this is what we should all be striving to get to level 4. That should be table stakes for any coaching and any sales performance tracking, as far as I'm concerned.
Totally agreed. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah. All right. So those are the 5 tips. We talked about how to embrace asynchronous, how to reduce the coaching load, both with self-evaluation and AI, as well as peer-to-peer learning and SME content and participation. Talked a little bit more about artificial intelligence, conversational intelligence, how to use those tools to amplify your coaching efforts. And then, of course, tying it all together with measurement. So hopefully these tips were useful to you. Again, we're very happy to field questions on them either now or later. Before we get to that, just as Craig said, we have a quick sneak peek of some pretty exciting stuff that we're doing here at Allego. Just want to reset the scene in terms of how Allego thinks about sales enablement. Jake went over this, but we always put the rep at the center of this wheel, right? That's important. So you can read this wheel as, in terms of the rep is at the center, and then in each category, Allego is enabling the rep to connect with a different audience. So with your onboarding and training, the rep is able to connect with the sales training and sales enablement teams. Through launches and rollouts, they connect with training and product marketing teams who are enabling those rollouts. Through content management, they're working directly with marketing to better understand and leverage the content that marketing is giving to them to use in their sales cycle. Virtual selling capabilities obviously connects the rep with buyers in a more powerful way. And then tying it all back to coaching and collaboration, all the features that we've discussed and the few that we're going to discuss right now connect reps to sales managers and to their teams. So with that, Jake, do you want to just talk a little bit about what's coming soon for anybody who's interested?
Yeah, so we've got some exciting new capabilities, and especially around coaching and around virtual selling, right? Some of the big topics of the day. So this first one here, AI virtual coaches. If you've done any research on coaching technologies, you've probably seen examples of AI being used in the coaching process. So this offering that we're coming out with is really our it takes our philosophy of maintaining the human to human connection through coaching, making sure you bolster the relationship between the rep and the manager. It sort of puts that into practice. And so what this is you can actually, with AI virtual coaches, you can actually now program a series of coaches, or you can set up a series of coaches for different initiatives. It's kind of like on a baseball team. If you've got a batting coach and you've got a pitching coach, right? Different coaches that have different specialty areas. You can do one of these for your sales team. You can have an AI that is a dedicated coach for that specific initiative. So it might be, hey, here's an AI virtual coach for product launches on the ADR team, on the account development team, right? And so any time a new product launch hits, there's a set of things that the ADR team is always going to need to be doing. They're always going to need to be sticking to certain types of messaging, but then there's going to be specifics to each new product. Well, you've got a dedicated product launch coach for that team set up, running in the background, and it's able to give them automated feedback. When you put that whole team through a certification exercise, right, on the messaging, it's, as you can see right here on the screen, it's able to give them automated feedback right away. They're able to see how they did, see topics that they shouldn't have spoken to, ones that they did a great job and they did speak to. And it knows that the AI, it's a personified AI that knows all of the things that need to be spoken to on that ADR team for product launch. Then from there, you can take that same coach and train it on or aim it against the calls that the reps are all getting out. So that ADR team, now that same set of things that the coach needed to be an expert in, the AI coach needed to be that expert in, to give feedback and scoring for their certification submissions when you went through a messaging when the product launch. That's the same set of stuff that it's going to want to coach to when they actually get out on calls. And so now you can start to use that same virtual coach on all the sales calls. And the reason we call it virtual coach is again, you can have multiple of these running concurrently. So for a rep that's getting on a call speaking to product X, you're going to want your product X virtual coach giving them feedback, providing, flagging to their manager if the rep said something they shouldn't have said, etc. Right now, if you've got that same rep later in the day is speaking to product Y, you want to have your product Y virtual coach giving that feedback and coaching. So it's a really, really nice way to kind of scale your coaching efforts, and it's all based in helping you touch more, have more coaching interactions, right, without having to spend so much time because you can target them. So yeah, that's the kind of the scoop with this.
Nice. And then let's give everybody, oh, sorry, I meant to pop this out so you can see all of the insights up close and personal. But let's jump to the next slide here. Sorry, you already covered a lot of this, so let's just skip on to the next. Jake, give the 60-second version of what's coming soon in the world of digital sales rooms at Allego.
Yep. So connecting back from the rep, they've just gone through their call on the new product, and something was said on the call that would indicate, hey, here's a great content piece to send. That AI virtual coach sends the rep, hey, here's the piece that you should send, and the rep can then take that piece and say, well, instead of sharing this piece of content and the 5 other pieces of content that I've shared with my prospect here from the call, why don't I deploy a dedicated space to collect and house all of the stuff that we're sharing with each other back and forth, content pieces, could be contracts, whatever it might be. It's a secured space for that deal. And so now the rep got the recommendation from the AI virtual coach to go in and say, okay, I'm gonna take this content piece and share it into my digital sales room that is built for this deal. And so what it is what you can see right here. It's a space that is just between the rep and the prospect, or the team of folks on the buying committee. That is a place to collaborate. You can, it's branded. It's a really nice experience, right? Modern buyers want to be in control of the experience. One of the things that the pandemic showed us is that even in B2B buying, folks are starting to get to be more self-sufficient. We're all buying stuff in our lives as consumers in a really kind of self-directed way. B2B buyers are wanting this now too. And so having this ability to empower your sales reps to create this kind of a dedicated space, and then the rep can curate the experience. The rep, as you can see here, they can capture personalized video messaging of themselves speaking to the prospect. Hey, here's your digital sales room. Here's the collection of things. Here's how you use this. Click here to find this. You can, I shared this content piece with you based on our call, and here's why, right? And so you can allow the buyer to be in control of the experience while still letting the rep really stay in the driver's seat. So yeah, that's what this is about here. That's kind of scratching the surface of these.
Yeah, and this is so powerful, because so much content, sales content right now is just it's all transmitted via email, right? And endless email threads with attachments going back and forth. This is a really nice centralized way of looking at all the pertinent information in one place. All right. So Greg, I know we're very close to time, but any questions that have come in that we should take a look at? And I do encourage everybody to reach out to both me and Jake. You can reach us on LinkedIn if you have specific questions. But Craig, you take it away.
Sure. Yeah, there were some questions. I don't think we're going to have time for all of them, and we'll get back to people by email with answers. Maybe if you can just touch on conversation intelligence. Can it support multiple languages, either Allegos or more in general?
The answer is yes. Yep. And I'm not all. I mean, it of course it varies vendor by vendor, but Allego certainly does support multiple languages, so that way you can, when you've got global teams, folks distributed across time zones, right, in different countries. So yes, the technology absolutely does support that.
Okay, great. And as a reminder, we'll be sending out the on-demand recording once it's available for you to watch and share with your team. You can also find more in-depth detail on the ideas discussed today in our research report, Virtual Sales Coaching Report, How Sales Training Has Changed. You can download that at allego.com/coaching2021. We'd love to hear from you about your sales enablement and sales coaching efforts. You can get in touch with us by requesting a demo or connecting on LinkedIn. We'd love to connect with you. And again, thanks for joining us today for this Allego webinar. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, John. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.